What up? We're back. We're going to be destroying more Enlightenment presuppositions, starting off with Enlightenment philosophy. And this time we're going to start with empiricism, the idea that all knowledge comes through sense data, or the best way to know knowledge is through sense data. And secularists, especially atheists, will try to weaponize this to show, well, if we can't empirically prove God, then we have no reasons to believe in him exists, or that anything immaterial can be proven empirically, which reduces to materialism. But the problem with this proposition is that it's ultimately self-refuting, because if you question the presupposition, the sentence structure, not just the sentence structure, the assumption that all knowledge comes through sense data is a universal claim. You're making a positive statement, and you need to have a coherent justification for such an assertion. But it ends up putting itself in a box where that statement cannot be empirically proved. Because how do you empirically prove the claim all knowledge comes through empirical sense data? That proposition in and of itself would have to be found in sense data. You can't put ideas under a microscope. You can't put language in a test tube. You can't put propositions in the lab. These things are assumed. But if you box yourself into such an idea, to such worldviews, then it's self-refuting. Knowledge then becomes impossible, which means that everything else is impossible. Secondly, numbers are also non-empirical, like negative integers. How do you empirically prove negative integers? You can't. They're assumed. If I'm holding up 3 fingers, the number 3 it exists. But if I have 3 fingers and 3 balls, there's still a universal 3, a transcendental aspect of 3 that is not empirical. You're not going to find it in a telescope, in the cosmic microwave background radiation. Those are all things that are just assumed. And the problem with people with empiricists is that mathematics become impossible, because statements such as logic and math are not empirical. Logic cannot be proven. You can't put reason under a microscope, which really shows that in this worldview, rationality becomes impossible because it doesn't really exist. And trying to equate it to brain chemistry destroys the possibility of truth. Because if I say 2 plus 2 equals 4, but if we just reduce that to brain chemistry, it's an absurdity to say that your brain chemistry is wrong. So now there's really no way to distinguish the true and the false within this worldview, which ultimately, the statement that materialism or atheism is true is also self-refuting given this worldview. Secondly, basic assumptions that people take for granted, such as the past exists. You can't empirically prove the past, and some people are going to go, oh, what about general relativity and quantum mechanics? But in quantum mechanics, you have something known as reconstruction of the past. That's not the same thing as empirically verifying the past. It's a reconstruction of the past. And even in physics, you still have to give an account for the error of time. And time in and of itself is an emergent feature. And some experiments through quantum entanglement, in quantum field theory, has shown that you can look at the Wheeler-DeWitt equations because of Einstein's worldview, Einstein's relativity. Space and time are one, so if space is emergent, so is time. Now we're not doing like science. We're more about philosophy, but I'm just adding that the very space-time that we walk through is not even in an objective fixed background, and it's an emergent feature. And you can watch Inspiring Philosophy or Michael Jones on YouTube for better information. Now, the nature of time. Since we can't empirically prove the past, if you're going to commit to yourself to only sense data, you can't prove that the year 1982 was a real thing. Or not just that, the 1800s. How do we know that the 1800s actually existed? Because no one from that time is alive, and we can't put it under a microscope. We have no clue if the 1800s actually existed. This might seem, well, this is absurdity. But under empiricism, if you're going to limit yourself to all knowledge is through sense data, you can't prove that the 1800s actually existed. So it just goes to show the absurdity of this worldview. But it also begs the question, well, how do we know? How do we give an account and a justification? How do we actually know that the past exists? Well, secondly, is you have to reject empiricism. And in a world where God is the reign ruler who affirms who controls the uniformity of nature, this is a coherent justification because God is beyond time. He is not fixed by it. He is not bound by it. He works within, in, and out of it. It ultimately, time as a source. Time is emergent, and it comes. Its ontological reality is rooted because it's created from God. That's why we are able to do science and stuff. Now, this is just part one of Enlightenment criticism. I will go into deeper. Then we're going to talk about how in atheism, reason and knowledge become impossible. So this is just part one of our statement.